Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Front Porch Podcast at the Old Sawtee Store. It's another beautiful Saturday here in Sawtee, Nacoochee Valley. And today we have Bruce Mundy joining me.
Good morning.
Good morning, Bruce. Glad you are here today. Bruce was in the band this morning, playing and singing, and we had a great time with that and had a good crowd for that. So we also have with us today Mr. Parks Davis. Parks is a native of the area, has a lot of family ties here and a lot of history, and we're just glad that he could come by today and hopefully share some of his experiences and some of his knowledge with us. Parks, tell us about Parks before we get started here.
About the name Parks?
About what you've done in your lifetime.
Oh, in my lifetime. Well, in my lifetime, most of my lifetime, I was a Methodist minister. I served 43 years in the Methodist ministry and retired in '09. And since then, I've had a place up here in the Nacoochee Valley. I was born here in 1941 in my grandmother's house, and spent a lot of my growing up years in this area in the valley, especially in the summertime when school was out. And after I started college and had been going to school a couple of years, and I met a woman that I fell in love with, and we became married while we were in school. But I'd always dreamed of living up here and owning my grandfather's business, his store and farm. And so I convinced her to move up here. My grandfather had announced he was retiring, going to close the store, and I said, "Oh no, don't do that. I want to buy it and live up here." So we moved up and ran the store for a couple of years, and during that time we had 2 children. And about that time the Lord said, "Oh, by the way, I called you into the ministry a long time ago. It's time for you to step up." So we sold the store and moved back to Atlanta for me to go to finish college and go to seminary. That's kind of that's a brief thumbnail sketch.
Well, I think there were more than one Hood store, and which one did you run?
I ran the one down on 17 down near the Methodist Church, just around the curve.
The one closest to here.
Yeah, and I was born in the house across the road from there, up in my grandmother's house. Yeah.
Well, tell us about how your family came to Sawtee.
Well, my family the Hood family is my family up in this area, and they had moved in the early 1800s west of Cleveland. Had some property out there. Probably took advantage of some of the land grants that the states were offering in those days. And then my great-grandfather decided that he would swap land with a Williams family over here in the valley. And so in 1885, he moved the family from over there over to Sawtee. My grandfather was 5 years old at the time, and I asked him one day how he got over here, and he said, "I don't know, I guess we walked." I imagine they had wagons and all to come that far.
And you had your grandfather was here, and he had the other 2 stores, and they were.
Well, yes, they lived up 255, and my great-grandfather had opened a store, and 2 of his sons, one of them being my grandfather, were running the store with him. And then when the sawmill business, timber business picked up in Helen, my grandfather arranged to lease they call it the station, I think now, down on the Hardman Farm, little red brick building down there, and he had the post office and a store that he started down there. So he was walking every day down there and running that store. And then he got the opportunity to buy some property midway. And so he bought that property next to the Methodist Church down there and built a store, ultimately built a house there. And so he didn't make that long walk anymore, but he continued to operate both stores. And 2 of his sons worked with him in that for a good number of years. And then when Helen the lumber business sort of began to play out, he just closed that store up at the junction up there at Hardman Farm and had built one across from the house where he had built for him and my grandmother to live, and he just ran the one store then from then on. All this is around 1940, 30, 40, 41.
You mentioned earlier your grandmother
Uh-huh.
and where she came from.
My
and-
grandmother was a Jenkins from down on Blue Creek, which doesn't seem like a long way to us now, but back in the horse and buggy days, that was a pretty good hike. But they met because they shared a woman who worked for both families. And my grandfather, once in a while, would go down to Blue Creek and pick up this lady who worked for both families. In doing that, he met my grandmother, who was one of 11 children. And most of them older, in fact, all of them older than she was. And a lot of them had married and gone away. But finally, they decided to get married, so he went down one afternoon in the buggy and picked her up, and they went to the preacher's house, and he performed their ceremony, and they went back by her house and ate a little food with her family, and then got in the buggy and drove all the way up to Saltee Valley. And she said that she had never met any of his family. And so when they got there, everybody in the family was there waiting to meet her. She didn't know anybody. And my grandfather had been married before and had one little boy about 5 years old. And so when she got there, she said she sat down, kind of introduced everybody, and the little boy just crawled up in her lap and said, "Would you be my mommy?" And she said she reckoned he did that because all the other children there had mamas, and he didn't have one, so he asked if she'd
So
be.
she was.
Oh, she was, and they had a great relationship. That was wonderful. My grandfather and grandmother then had 4 more children, but that's kind of their story. She was a Jenkins, and she had eight sisters, or maybe 7 sisters, and 3 brothers, and of course they all married people, and so my kinfolks are scattered all over the place. Every time I turn around, I'm meeting a new cousin. People kid me when we go anywhere. They say, "Well, Parks is kin to everybody up here, so be careful what you say."
That's right.
Well, that's very interesting in your ties to the valley. I know you have a hobby that you participate in up in this area in the fishing world.
Oh yeah, I fish a little bit. I fly fish. I fished a little bit all my life, but I never really got into fly fishing until I retired. And my wife had taken a fly tying class that a member of our church taught in our Eagle program at the church. And she convinced me to take it when I retired. She never did fish. She has never done any fly fishing, but I took it and just really got involved in it and have fished all over North Georgia and some out west, and North Carolina and South Carolina, anywhere there's a good trout stream.
Well, there's a few good ones around here.
There are. Oh yeah, I didn't mean to leave Georgia out. I enjoyed fishing in Georgia.
Yeah, that's something I've been wanting to learn to do. And I noticed a few weeks ago at the Saltee Cultural Center, they were giving fly fishing lessons out on the green. They had about maybe 20 folks, and they all had poles, and they had instructors teaching
I
them
saw
how to.
them.
Yeah.
Trout Unlimited was doing that.
Okay.
Every once in a while they will do that, and I don't know if the community center was sponsoring that or they just
I
were
don't
using
know,
their field out
If I would
there.
have known about it, I would have taken
Gone
that
down,
course. Yeah.
They had a group of young people,
Mm-hmm.
and they had brought them up here and they were showing them how to cast a little bit
Yeah.
before they took them over and put them in the river.
Mm-hmm.
I've helped do that before. It's a good program.
Yeah.
Yeah. We might get you on the river if you get.
Hey, as long as I can catch a fish, I'm there.
Yeah. Well, that's the uncertain part.
Oh, yeah,
it's
that's right,
fishing,
yeah.
not necessarily catching.
That's right.
Well, Parks, tell us about your early memories of this place, of the old Saltee store. What was it like when
Knocky Brown and ran the store, and I think Nana was the postmistress here back in my childhood days. And I was not in the store a lot, but once in a while I would be down here and look around. They sold feed more than they did groceries, I think, but some groceries.
Mm-hmm. Well, hasn't on the outside at least hasn't changed very much.
Not very much at all. No, you look at it today, and it's pretty close to what it was 80 years ago, 75, 80 years ago.
Do you still have other family in the area here?
Well, I have Cliff Hood and his siblings are relatives. His father and my mother were first cousins, so we know them pretty well. And I'm sure I'm related to a lot of other people. I just don't know who they are. I ran into Creed Dyer's daughter the other day. It was rich, and she stopped at my house in Gainesville, and I'd had a what was it, a chainsaw? Yeah, I had the body of a chainsaw I had put on the street that I didn't want, and she had a little grandboy with him, and I guess he had seen it and decided he wanted it, so they stopped, and she pulled in the driveway, didn't know who we were at all, and said, "Are you giving this away? My grandson wants it." And I said, "Yeah, I'm giving it away, sure am." And we kind of introduced ourselves. "I'm Parks Davis." She said, "I know that name." So we got to talking. I said, "Are you a Methodist?" She said, she didn't ever answer that question really, but she just kept on thinking, and I found it. She said, "Well, I'm Creed Dyer's daughter." And I said, "Oh, I know Creed, or knew Creed. He lived up on the mountain there and had a place down off the highway and had a pet deer." That's what I always remember about Creed. He had a pet deer that come in the house, and it was a buck, in fact. She said, "Oh yeah." She said, "It was just like an old goat. You couldn't get rid of it." But anyway, yeah, I'm still related to a lot of the folks, the farmers, anybody that has a Jenkins background or Hood. A lot of the Hoods have moved away. Cliff and Connie are the only ones I can think of right now who live close by.
Well, I've known Parks for a number of years, several years now, but the first time I came in contact with Parks was at my office one day.
Oh yeah.
And I work in the local bank, and Parks had been in earlier that day and had left, and it was after hours. I was still working, and I heard somebody knocking on the back door, and I went and looked out, and there was Parks, and he said, I opened the door, and he introduced himself, and he said, "Reverend Davis," and he said, I was here earlier, and I left my briefcase in the bank, and my sermon's in it. And it was a Saturday, I believe, might have been a Friday, but it was before Sunday.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And so we got to chatting, and we looked around for a few minutes, and then we found his briefcase and returned it to him, and I followed him out and went outside, and we were still talking, and then I realized that I had walked out and left my keys inside the bank, and the door locked behind me. So there I was, locked out of the bank.
Well, at least he got his sermon back.
I said, well, there's one good deed doesn't, always work out both ways. But anyway, we had a chuckle about that.
Oh,
that was a long time ago now.
You asked me what I remember about this place. I remember when that road out there was dirt.
oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the house where I was born up there, it has a pretty sharp bank now. But in the old days, it was just a nice gentle slope all the way down. And my mother was home to have me, actually, and she was walking down to the store, and she fell and rolled down the hill and started her into labor.
Oh my goodness.
People laugh about that and say, "Well, that explains a whole lot about
That's right.
you."
That's right. Well, that's maybe why you turned Methodist instead of Baptist then.
That could be. That could be. Well, my mother grew up Methodist in this Methodist church out here. My dad was Baptist. In fact, when I was a teenager, he went into the ministry, and he and I were in school at the same time in seminary.
Okay.
And but anyway, that's a whole long different story. I married a Presbyterian, and that's what happens, Baptist marries a Presbyterian. Where are they going to
Well, I grew up Presbyterian and had to convert to the Baptist faith after my wife and I were married.
Oh yeah.
And that was kind of. She said, "Now, I'm not going to marry you unless you become a Baptist." I said, "Hey, I'm whatever."
Well, Baptists and Presbyterians make pretty good Methodists.
They do.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of Baptists around here. Someone asked me a couple weekends ago in here, and said, "Are you a man of faith?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I am, and I'm a Methodist." They said, "Well, that's close enough."
We get a lot of kidding back and forth.
Yeah, that's
A
close
lot of
enough.
kidding. Yeah.
Well, Parks, thank you so much for coming by today. And Bruce is a regular around here. He's here quite often, become a friend, and he's moved to the area a few months now ago.
Yeah.
And
We moved here in July of last year from Covington.
From Covington?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. You know where Social Circle is?
I
guess.
drive through it at least every day.
I served that church for a few years.
Oh,
back
really?
in the
Social
early
Circle
70s.
Methodist. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got several friends that are members there now.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
aside from being a very talented musician, Bruce has also done a couple of other things in
Well, I've
life.
42 years of building homes,
Oh, wow.
and I've got my last 2 started, and after that, we'll just see where the Lord leads.
Yeah. Well, I was going to mention to you about fly fishing. It's just like cane pole fishing,
Uh-huh.
especially up here in these streams of trees all
Got-
around.
yes,
You know,
yes.
you think about fly fishing, you think, oh, there's going to be somebody out here throwing that's going to go 30 yards behind them, 30 yards. Well, if you're in the middle of a wide river, you can do that. But if you're fishing some of the
Just got to
streams,
kind of.
you just flip it over, let her drift down,
Uh-huh.
roll it back up, and let her drift down again. That's what a lot of
Well,
them
if you teach me, do you guarantee that I'll catch a fish?
No,
Okay.
no. I tie my own flies too, and I tell people I tie ugly flies that sometimes catch fish. Yeah.
That's good.
Bruce is also a pilot, so I just
well,
just
I have-
thought about
yeah.
this.
Commercial pilot's license,
see.
yes.
So he could fly us out west, and we could really turn it loose out there.
Oh, yeah.
we could.
Oh, yeah.
Go to Montana, Colorado, fish in those streams.
Yeah, my son's father-in-law makes a trip every year to Montana to fly
yeah?
fish.
Yeah.
Well, funny story on fly fishing. My wife and I went to Jackson Hole,
Yeah.
Wyoming, and so I wanted to fly fish in the Snake River,
Yeah.
which I did, and didn't catch anything. And there was a hawk that kept watching me, and I said, "Well, he didn't catch anything either, so I don't feel too bad."
No. Well, it's a wonderful place. I hope you enjoy Sky Lake as much as we have. We've had a house in there. We hadn't lived there full time, but we've had a house in there.
Can I
since
ask you a question?
Yeah.
My granddaughter, Holly, and she's Fangman now. You
Holly
wouldn't, Fangman, she married Levi Fangman.
Oh, okay.
And when they got married 4 years ago, they moved to Sky Lake, and a Methodist minister let them live in their house. That wouldn't be you by any chance, would it?
No.
Okay.
Methodist
With you being
minister.
yeah, he owned the house there.
Could have been Lyndon Eubanks.
Could have been, but they lived there about 6 months, and he said, "We're just glad to have you there. You don't have to pay, just pay the utilities and take care of the place." And that's what prompted us when we decided to move from Covington.
Yeah.
She said, "Pop, you need to go look in Sky Lake," and we did. And
How many years ago was that?
they've been married 6 years, maybe 7 years, because their oldest is
Lyndon's
5.
been gone longer.
Yeah, it's 5. But it was a retired Methodist minister that just prompted me to ask that question.
Yeah, and I don't know why I can't come up with a name of who that might have been.
And I don't even know which house. Well, it was on Saltee Trail because we live on Saltee Trail, the main road, going up
Yeah.
to Sky Lake. And anyway, that just an aside.
Yeah.
Since you were here, I thought I'd ask you.
Yeah. There is a guy named Joel something, Joe Harrington.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been Joe. He's got a place in there.
Okay.
And
And he was a Methodist minister.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
he lives down south of Atlanta somewhere. Fayetteville,
Could
I
be
think.
because it wasn't a full-time residence for him. Yeah.
Joe Harrington.
Yeah.
That's probably who it was. I'm trying to think who the other retired or just Methodist preachers is.
Right.
I should know.
Well, now is Jim Ramsey? He's a retired
Baptist.
Methodist.
He's Baptist.
Oh, he is Baptist.
Yeah.
Okay.
He lives just down the street.
I knew I
from me.
liked him a whole lot better than him.
I live on Woodbriar too.
Yeah.
Not 2 or 3 houses from Jim.
Yeah.
Half a dozen. Something.
He ran a Bible study a few months ago that we attended on
Yeah.
Monday nights. Yes.
He's done that a long time. I
Mhm.
don't, off and on. I don't
Mhm.
know if he does it all the time.
I think so.
He's a good guy.
Well, Parks, we certainly appreciate you coming by today and sharing with us and being with us.
You're
Hope
welcome.
you'll come back
Yeah, come
anytime
back.
you can and visit with us.
Yeah, I need to come give a listen. I thought I was getting here in time to hear about 30 minutes.
Well, today we quit playing about 1
About 1, yes.
1
About
o'clock.
1,
It just
yeah.
kind of depends on what people has to do that day. So
Yeah.
they all kind of vamoosed
It's,
at the same time.
mhm.
Well, I just missed it today. Then.
Just barely.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's good. Glad you're doing it.
well, it's we're having fun. I don't know if anybody else is enjoying it or not, but we are.
Yeah.
But Bruce, thank you for coming by and
Thank you.
and being
Appreciate
with us
it
on
very
this
much.
today.
Mhm.
And we'll see y'all soon on the Front Porch Podcast and at the Old Salty Store. And come by and visit us.
Thank you, Don.